Ethan Cole had spent most of his life in the open lands of Arizona, where the sun touched everything with gold during the day and the cool wind whispered through the desert at night. He was a quiet cowboy, not the kind who bragged or searched for trouble. People in the nearby town knew him as someone who helped when help was needed. He fixed broken fences, guided lost travelers, and shared whatever he had with those who lacked. He was calm, steady, and dependable, the sort of man people trusted even without knowing him well. One late evening, after finishing some work in town, Ethan was riding home along a narrow trail. The sky was turning orange, slowly fading into dusk, and the air carried the soft smell of dry grass. His horse walked at a gentle pace, and Ethan was thinking of nothing more than getting back to his cabin, boiling water for tea, and resting his tired legs. But something broke the peaceful silence. A faint sound, almost too soft to hear. At first he thought it was the wind or some small animal. But then the sound came again. It was a voice. A frightened voice. A cry. Ethan pulled the reins and listened carefully. The voice was weak, carrying fear within it. It came from somewhere near the hills to his right. Without hesitation, he turned his horse toward the sound. Ethan was not the kind to ignore someone in need. The land was wide and unforgiving. If someone was crying out here, alone, it meant they needed help quickly. He rode closer until he saw a small figure sitting near a fallen log. In the soft light of dusk, he recognized the shape of a woman. She looked tiny, almost too small for this harsh land. Ethan slowed his horse and approached slowly, not wanting to scare her. When he reached her, he stepped down and knelt beside her. She lifted her face, and he saw exhaustion in her eyes. Her clothes were dusty, and her breathing was uneven. Her name, she whispered, was Nayeli. She was an Apache woman, but smaller and more fragile than any he had met before. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled and she sank back down. With a trembling voice, she said, "I'm not strong enough, cowboy." Her words carried shame, fear, and helplessness all at once. Ethan shook his head gently. "You don't have to be strong right now," he said softly. "You just need to breathe. I'm here." He gave her water from his canteen. She drank carefully, as if even lifting her hands required effort. Ethan noticed how tired and hungry she looked. She must have been wandering alone for a long time. When she finished drinking, she closed her eyes for a moment, relief softening her tense face. Nayeli explained in a shaky voice that she had been separated from her family. A misunderstanding between two groups had caused chaos. People ran in different directions. She had tried to find her way back, but ended up lost. With no water, little food, and no clear direction, she kept moving until her body could no longer continue. Ethan listened quietly, his heart growing heavier with every word. He had seen the desert take strong men down. It was a hard land that did not forgive weakness or accidents. A woman lost in this harsh environment, tired and alone, was in dangerous condition. Ethan knew she wouldn't survive another night out here. He gently placed his coat around her shoulders. It was warm and heavy, almost too big for her small frame. She looked surprised at his kindness, as if she wasn't used to someone helping without wanting something in return. Ethan did not ask many questions. He just asked if she felt pain anywhere, and she shook her head, though her face told him she was exhausted beyond words. As they prepared to move, Ethan heard something faint behind the ridge, soft steps, or maybe distant voices. He turned his head sharply. The desert was quiet, but quiet did not always mean safe. Nayeli's eyes widened, and she whispered that some men had chased her earlier. She didn't know if they were still following her, but she feared they might be. Ethan felt a small chill run through him. He didn't want trouble, but he also couldn't risk danger coming close to this vulnerable woman. He helped her onto his horse, sitting behind the saddle so she wouldn't fall. She leaned forward weakly, holding on with trembling hands. Ethan walked beside the horse, leading them toward his cabin. The sky grew darker, stars appearing one by one. Nayeli looked around nervously, afraid the shadows hid enemies. Ethan kept speaking calmly to reassure her. He told her she was safe, and he would not let anything happen to her. His voice was calm, steady, the way someone speaks when they fully believe their words. After a long walk, they reached his small cabin near the edge of the desert. It was simple, a sturdy wooden structure with a porch, a small stable for his horse, and enough space inside for cooking and resting. Ethan helped her down, guiding her inside gently. She looked around, surprised by the safety the small cabin offered. He lit a lamp and heated some water. Nayeli sank onto a chair, her hands shaking slightly. Ethan gave her a warm cup to hold, and she drank slowly. She looked at him with gratitude, mixed with disbelief. It was clear that she wasn't used to someone protecting her so quickly and without hesitation. When she seemed more stable, Ethan told her she could sleep on his bed. He would keep watch outside. At first, she protested, saying she didn't want to trouble him, but Ethan simply smiled and shook his head. "Rest," he said. "You need it. I'll be right outside." She hesitated, but her tired body finally accepted the offer. Before lying down, she whispered again, "I'm not strong enough." Ethan replied softly, "You survived out there alone. That shows strength. Let me help with the rest." When she closed her eyes, sleep claimed her quickly. Ethan stepped outside, closing the door quietly. He sat on a chair on the porch, keeping his rifle beside him, not to harm anyone, but to warn them if necessary. He listened to the silence around him, watching the shadows move with the wind. Hours passed. The moon rose high in the sky, shining brightly. Ethan stayed awake, thinking of the small woman asleep inside. She had been frightened, lost, and exhausted, but she still had enough courage to run from danger and survive until he found her. That alone made her strong in his eyes. Suddenly, Ethan noticed fresh tracks near the cabin, marks that hadn't been there earlier. Someone had passed close during the night. He felt a ripple of caution, but stayed calm. Whatever danger was following Nayeli, he knew he would protect her with everything he had. She was not just a stranger now. She was someone who needed safety, someone who trusted him without even knowing him well. Inside the cabin, Nayeli slept deeply, unaware that Ethan was keeping watch like a silent guardian. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing clearly. He would not allow harm to reach her. And as the night grew quiet again, Ethan felt a strong promise form in his heart, a promise he intended to keep, even if it meant risking his own life. The sun rose slowly over the desert, turning the sky pale pink and gold. Ethan had stayed awake the entire night, sitting on the porch chair with his rifle by his side. He did not sleep even for a minute, because he kept watching the shadows, listening for footsteps, and checking the area around the cabin again and again. Nayeli was sleeping inside, safe and warm, and Ethan wanted to keep it that way. As morning light spread across the land, Ethan stood up and walked around the cabin to look at the ground. The soil was soft in some areas, and he could clearly see marks from boots, fresh ones. Someone had walked close to the cabin during the night, maybe even tried to see inside. Ethan knelt down, studying the footprints carefully. They weren't his, and they weren't Nayeli's either. This confirmed his fear that someone had indeed followed her all the way here. When he returned inside, Nayeli was awake, though she still looked weak. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. Her eyes lifted when Ethan walked in, and she immediately noticed the serious look on his face. She asked softly if something was wrong. Ethan did not want to frighten her, but he also did not want to hide the truth. He told her someone had come near the cabin at night. Nayeli's face turned pale with worry. Her hands tightened around the blanket. She whispered that she never wanted anyone to get in danger because of her. Ethan shook his head gently and reassured her that she had done nothing wrong. "You didn't bring danger," he said calmly. "Danger came on its own, and I'll handle it." Before they could talk further, Ethan heard the distant sound of horses. The sound was faint at first, but grew louder, echoing across the land. Nayeli's breath quickened. She moved closer to the window but stayed hidden behind the wall. Ethan stepped outside, closing the door behind him. His eyes focused on the trail that led toward the cabin. Soon, 3 riders appeared in the distance. As they came closer, Ethan recognized them. These were the same troublemaking men from around the region, men known for stirring fear, for chasing anyone they believed they could scare, and for causing tension between different groups. Their horses kicked up dust as they approached. They stopped several feet away from Ethan. The man in front, who seemed to be the leader, narrowed his eyes. He asked Ethan if he had seen a small Apache woman wandering alone. His tone was not polite. It was demanding, sharp, and full of suspicion. Ethan kept his expression calm. He stood tall, meeting their eyes without fear. He simply said that he hadn't seen anyone pass by. The leader didn't believe him. He pushed his horse a step forward and repeated the question louder. Ethan stayed calm and refused to step back. His voice didn't shake. He told them again that he hadn't seen anyone, and even if he had, he would not hand a helpless woman over to men who rode like wolves searching for prey. Nayeli, inside the cabin, watched the men through a tiny gap in the curtain. Her heart pounded with fear, and she covered her mouth to stay quiet. She could see Ethan standing between her and the riders, and the sight filled her eyes with tears. He was alone. They were 3. And still, he stood there with such calm bravery that it made her chest tighten. The riders grew frustrated. They muttered to each other, clearly not pleased with Ethan's answers. Then one of them tried to guide his horse past Ethan toward the cabin. Ethan stepped into his path, blocking the way. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled as he said firmly that no one would pass. His tone carried a warning, quiet but powerful. The man on the horse glared down at him. For a moment, Ethan thought the rider might try to force his way forward, but Ethan did not move. He stood like a rock planted in the earth. The rider finally pulled back and looked at his companions. They exchanged angry looks but did not push further. After a short moment of tension, the leader gave a sharp order, and the 3 riders turned their horses around, riding away with frustrated shouts fading in the distance. Ethan watched them until they were far off the trail. He did not relax until they disappeared completely behind the hills. Then he went back inside, closing the door gently. Nayeli stood there, her eyes shining with tears she could not hold back. She hurried toward him, her voice trembling as she said she was sorry he had to face danger because of her. Ethan shook his head, wiping the dust from his hands. He told her softly that protecting someone in need was never a burden to him. "You didn't put me in danger," he said. "I chose to help you because it was the right thing to do." Nayeli felt overwhelmed. She said in a small voice, "Why did you protect me like that? I'm not strong enough. I can't even stand without help." Her words broke a little, like she was trying to hold back more tears. Ethan stepped closer and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. He spoke gently, telling her that strength does not always show in muscles or loud words. Sometimes strength is surviving when you feel like giving up. It is walking even when your legs feel heavy. It is running from danger even when fear shakes you. Nayeli had done all of that. To him, she was strong in ways she didn't realize. She lowered her eyes and nodded slowly, taking in his words. For the first time since he found her, she felt a small spark of hope inside her. Ethan then told her that he would help her find her family again, but they needed to move carefully. The riders might come back, and he didn't want to risk their safety by staying too long in one place. Over the next few days, Ethan prepared supplies. He packed water, dry food, and blankets. He made sure his horse was strong enough for the long journey. Nayeli rested, growing stronger each day, though she still stayed close to Ethan because the land outside felt too frightening. When they finally left the cabin, Ethan helped her onto the horse again. She held onto the saddle, still unsure of her strength. But she trusted him. They traveled across the desert, through rocky paths and quiet valleys. Ethan always stayed alert, checking the trails for signs of danger. Nayeli watched him closely, noticing how he always placed himself between her and anything uncertain. During the journey, they talked more. She shared small stories about her family, about her parents and siblings, and how they moved together from camp to camp. Ethan listened with quiet interest, asking gentle questions. He told her stories, too, about his childhood, his time working on ranches, and the peaceful life he wanted to build. Their conversations helped her forget her fear and helped him understand her better. After several days of searching, they finally reached an area where Nayeli believed her family might be. They followed signs, footprints, old ashes from a fire, pieces of cloth stuck on branches. And then, late one afternoon, they saw movement in the distance. A group of people stood on a small rise, scanning the land. Nayeli's breath caught in her throat. She recognized them. Her family saw her too. They ran toward her, calling her name with relief and tears. When they reached her, they embraced her tightly, thanking the sky that she was alive. Nayeli introduced Ethan, telling them how he had protected her with his life. Her family thanked him deeply, speaking with warmth and gratitude. Nayeli turned to Ethan, her eyes soft but emotional. She told him she would never forget him, that his kindness had saved her. Ethan smiled quietly. Helping her had not been planned, but it had felt right. Now seeing her safe, surrounded by people who loved her, he felt peace in his heart. Before he left, Nayeli touched his arm gently and whispered, "You protected me when I had nothing. I will always remember you." Ethan nodded, tipping his hat with a simple kindness that was part of his nature. Then he rode away slowly, leaving the reunited family behind. As he disappeared into the desert horizon, Nayeli watched him until he was only a small figure in the distance. She held her family close and whispered softly that she would always honor the cowboy who stood between her and danger with quiet courage and a heart full of strength.